On today's Hot Sheet, I'm discussing this week's FOMC meeting and Chair Powell's statements on housing. We've got the PCE report for June and pending home sales report as well. Today is Thursday, July 31, 2025. I am Byron Lazine, and the Hot Sheet starts now. Live from Connecticut, finally. Been waiting all week to break down Jerome Powell, current Fed chair, opening statement, prepared statement that the committee prepares, as well as his presser. Everybody was waiting for the presser, the Q&A. Is there going to be a signal, a signal of common sense that we're going to cut in September? Are we going to get that signal from the chair like the chair signaled last year between this meeting and the September meeting in Jackson Hole that, leading into a presidential election, we don't play politics at the Fed. Leading into the election, we're going to be cutting. Let's leak that information out. Let's get a stock bump right before a huge presidential election. That's what the Fed did last year. But the market's wondering, will they do it again? Is he going to wait till Jackson Hole? Is he not going to do it? I'll tell you what, the markets didn't like what they heard from Jerome Powell. Oh, the markets didn't like it at all. If you watched the stock market last night, then you know at the end of Jerome Powell's comments, you know what I'm talking about. The stock market was moving down while Jerome Powell was speaking. We don't like the signals we're getting from Jerome Powell. And what do you know? This morning, stock market recovers from the sell-off that Jerome Powell created with a little bit of lack of just, what is the hard data telling me I should do? You've got a stock market that's now recovered here a little bit this morning. Listen, we're at all-time highs, so recovery is a very ridiculous phrase that I'm using. You had Meta and Microsoft earnings giving a bump on futures, and you also had this now another trade deal. Okay, again, you can get emotional about our president. I had some emotional responses yesterday on IG. You can get emotional. The fact is, the dude is stacking up dubs, and you didn't even have to vote for him to acknowledge that. Maybe a deal now with China. So it's the market's liking these deals. The market's not liking where Jerome Powell is positioning the Fed and the Federal Reserve. Fed holds steady, but guess what? Two officials, first time since 1993, two officials since that on the committee. This is an 9-2 vote on the committee. Two officials voted no for the consensus. The consensus here was, we're going to hold rates steady. Two of the 11 said, nope, we disagree. And that's the first time that's happened since late 1993. That's kind of a crazy stat. Okay, 9-2, keeping the rate between 4.25 and 4.5. First time since 1993, multiple governors. Now, who are those two governors? Well, there are two of the governors that are potentially in the handful short list of next Fed chair that Trump has on his short list. So if you're in line to be the next Fed chair, or at least in the running, what are you going to do here on this vote? This is first time since 93. So this is something people are worried about. Our politics now, the president of the United States having too much influence on the FOMC, the Federal Reserve, supposed to be completely separate. What have we seen in the last couple of weeks? We've seen the president take only the fourth president ever to visit the Federal Reserve to review the $2.7 billion renovations that are going on over there. Only the fourth president ever to visit the Federal Reserve. We're seeing now two members of the committee do something that hasn't happened since 1993. Same two members that are in line to potentially be at the favor of the president when he announces a new Federal Reserve chairperson by as late as May, because that's when Powell's term is up, or as early as any time now, not to fire Powell, but to create that shadow chair. Because what would the markets potentially do if there's Governor Chris Waller, for example, who's announced, who was one of those two no votes? The markets might start pricing in what they know he's going to do as a leader of the chair. Okay. So fifth straight meeting. Okay. The only time they've been cutting in the last 3 years, the couple of cuts came during campaign time leading into last election. Take that for what it's worth. Maybe it was a coinky dink that, oh, now's the right time to start cutting. Everybody says the Federal Reserve is not supposed to play politics and vice versa. I see a lot of examples for that to be different. Okay. I had somebody who I respect on Instagram say, Byron, why are you saying too late about Jerome Powell? Because he played politics when he was waiting too long, too late in the beginning. You know, people don't use President Trump's nicknames. One, it's funny. Get over it. Get over it. It's funny. Two, it's actually right. He waited way too long to start increasing, Jerome Powell did, interest rates back to April 2021 when he convinced Congress to print $2.3 trillion of unnecessary money. Didn't need it. If you couldn't figure out what COVID was by April of 21, your head was in the sand. Sorry. We got enough evidence now that there was a lot of people right about that time period. And Jerome Powell wasn't one of them, thought we needed to print more money. Then he called inflation transitory when it pops up in 22. Transitory. Everybody could see when you print 80% of the monetary dollar, the dollars in circulation, that prices are going to go up. Everybody could see it, but Jerome Powell wanted to say it was transitory, potentially to take care of that current administration. Okay. So the official FOMC statement made no mention of housing, homes, shelter, loans, or builders. So the prepared statement, remember, the Fed does not care about the housing market. The two mentions of mortgage were related to committee holdings of mortgage-backed securities. The Fed does not care about housing. Who does care about housing? Well, we know somebody's been very loud about housing lately. Okay. Again, it might trigger you. Somebody finally keeps talking about housing. That's the good news. The bad news is it's not the president of NAR. The bad news is it's not Jerome Powell. It's the president of the United States. This was from yesterday. Second quarter GDP comes in at 3%, well above expectations of 2.3. And calling for the lower rate, which didn't happen. Let people buy, refinance their homes. Let people buy and refinance their homes. You're going to see over and over and over again from this administration a call out about housing, a care for housing. Now we have bipartisan agreement in that. We've got Elizabeth Warren and Tim Scott from yesterday. When we go over yesterday, we got Tim Scott, Elizabeth Warren, two opposing views, opposite sides of the aisle, coming together with the banking committee on a 24-0 bipartisan vote on a housing bill. Okay. Now, that seems to me to be obvious. You've got 24-0 bipartisan, both sides of the aisle. Politics believe in housing. You've got President Trump who believes in. And by the way, this is the same Elizabeth Warren that in September 2024. If you want to tell me that Jerome Powell never plays politics, in September 2024, Elizabeth Warren said, cut the rate leading into the election. Same Elizabeth Warren. Cut the rate, cut the rate. That's what he did. He did it right before the election. What did she say in April? We shouldn't be cutting the rate. That's ridiculous. I hate Donald Trump. Okay. So no mention of housing in Jerome Powell's prepared statements. As expected. Let's go to the Q&A. Let's go to the Q&A from the committee who cares little about housing. Their only focus, remember, this is in the prepared statements, they're only focused on the dual mandate, maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Okay. By the way, maximum employment, Jerome Powell acknowledged we are near or at maximum employment. Yeah, we are. Okay. So check, goal achieved. And if you actually look at stable prices, yeah, pretty much goal achieved. We got an inflation report, but we're there. It's time to start easing, as you said, Jerome. You would start doing well before we landed on the 2% longer run objective. You got to do it before we get there. That's what he used to say. Now that we're close, need more time. We don't want to get inflation out of control again. Tariffs. All right, let's go to the Q&A. We've got a first question here. Or go to go to 242. This is in the opening statement if you want, Haley. The only thing, stay with where you were. Go to the first question. The only time, the opening statement that I just showed you, the PDF, nothing about housing. He did mention housing once in his opening up of the presser, and that was to say activity in the housing sector. Activity in the housing sector remains weak. He loves saying that. He loves being the guy that took residential real estate, 17% of the GDP. Most people, what a lot of people in America strive to be a part of. And he put it in the toilet, put it in a real estate recession. Loves to mention that. All right, Reuters, Howard Schneider. Let's go to his question. Talking about a cut in September. This is what the markets hated yesterday. Maybe this China trade deal talks today, and Meta and Microsoft earnings are going to bail out the loss in the stock market that Jerome created with these comments.
There's a lot of lean in the markets, and not to mention out of the administration for a rate cut now in September. Is that expectation unrealistic at this point?
So, as you know, today we decided to leave our policy rate where it's been, where I would characterize as modestly restrictive. Inflation is running a bit above 2%. As I mentioned, even excluding tariff effects, the labor market's solid, historically low unemployment. Financial conditions are accommodative, and the economy is not performing as though restrictive policy were holding it back inappropriately. So it seems to me and to almost the whole committee that the economy is not performing as though restrictive policy is holding it back inappropriately, and modestly restrictive policy seems appropriate. All that said, there's also downside risk to the labor market. In coming months, we'll receive a good amount of data that will help inform our assessment of the balance of risks and the appropriate setting of the federal funds rate.
So just to follow up by coming.
One thing he's right about, I mean, you saw it quarter two, the economy appears to be kind of moving 3% GDP versus 2.3 expectations. So despite the restrictive policy now, the only part of the economy is not moving is housing. Totally biased here on the hot sheet. We want housing to work for more people. It's an interest rate environment, sensitive environment. a lot of people say, well, housing can work if people ask less for their home. It's not going to happen. 80% of the dollars were printed under this federal chairman in the last 5 years. 80% of the dollars. 40% of homes don't have a mortgage on them. 4 out of 10. What seller is just going to plummet what they would want for their house by 30%? The price level that we're at is here to stay. Oh, I wish milk, a carton of milk was $1. Well, it's never going to happen. Sorry. And you're not getting homes for $200,000. Okay. So certain things, listen, I love the 80s time frame and the 90s, growing up in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, as much as anybody. It was a great time. Can't go back. Okay. I can't get that Tupac poster on my wall again. It's gone. Okay. And we're not going to get those price levels back. So you're not going to get a real estate market to open up on price outside of a global economic catastrophe like the GFC, the mortgage crisis. You're not getting price relief significant enough to make homes affordable. It's interest rate. It's an interest rate sensitive business. It's the only way we get there. I know, and the committee, the banking committee, that bipartisan committee, which I love seeing bipartisan efforts, 24-0, talked about it yesterday. Go watch the replay if you're interested on some of these housing acts, are passionate about more supply, and I get it. Makes sense. It'll take a long time. If we're going to sit at 7% waiting for that for the next 3-4 years, we'll be kind of skidding along on 4 million existing home sales throughout that time period like we have been the last few years. Okay. So Powell says, listen, the economy is not performing as though we have a restrictive policy. And he's kind of right. You got 3% GDP. You got trade deals that are actually working. I know that's hard for some to come to grips with, but that's the reality. You got a stock market that's an all-time high. And so you do have, Powell's kind of right about this. Now he says there's downside risk to the labor market. We're at maximum employment. So it kind of can only get worse. That would get the Fed to move faster is what he's alluding to on cutting rates. Let's go to Nick Timmeros, Wall Street Journal. This is the Adam Schefter, if you will, of covering the Fed. And he's Wall Street Journal. Question about 16 minutes into the presser.
Nick Timmeros, the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, my question is about what have you learned over the last few months about the inflation generating and price pass-through process? And just to drill down, the June CPI report showed evidence of tariff-induced goods inflation. Now, the tariff landscape is only starting to be settled with some of these more recent deals. Given the lags between when tariffs are announced and when they show up in goods prices, is 2 months a long enough horizon to evaluate the impact and be confident that tariffs aren't impacting the broader inflation process?
I think you have to think of this as still quite early days. And so I think what we're seeing now is substantial amounts of tariff revenue being collected on the order of $30 billion a month, which is, substantially higher than before. And
this, remember what I said in April when tariffs hit. Remember what was the Liberation Day as marketed by Trump? It was April 2nd. Really, we're talking 4 months of data, right? Haley, did I get that math right? Or July 31. So August 2nd would be 4 months, I think. So we're really talking about 4 months, not 2 months. But in April, I said, watch out for where you're getting your tariff information. My buddy Sharon, new BAM board, first ever BAM board member, said he put out a piece that was exceptional. Hey, tariffs are toll booths. They're not a tax. They're a toll booth on COGS, cost of goods sold. It's not 20% on top of a dollar. What's the cost of goods sold inside of that dollar? It's a toll on that. But what I warned against was, hey, dig into the information like that if you want to really understand what a tariff is, how it works. But don't listen to these partisan analysts on the left or the right who are just trying to drive you into tariffs are the best thing ever, or tariffs are the worst thing. They're going to destroy the economy. We played the clip of Bill Maher. It was hilarious yesterday. Bill Maher smoking a blunt, maybe the first blunt we've ever had on the hot sheet. And he's saying, yeah, in April, I thought tariffs were going to destroy the economy. Why? Because those were the voices he was listening to. Come 4th of July, they said the economy is going to be in the tank. What happened come 4th of July? Last day of July here. Stock market all-time high. And what Powell just acknowledged, and a lot of people are having a hard time acknowledging, there's billions and billions of dollars. He says, we are now seeing substantial amount of tariff revenue being collected on the order of $30 billion a month. Remember, Powell and Trump, not particularly a friendly relationship. Okay. They're not going to go watch Happy Gilmore 2 together this weekend and share a bowl of popcorn. It pains him to talk about that W. Pains a lot of people to acknowledge those W's, but this is the point about tariffs. They, to me, in April, were always a light switch. You can turn them on, turn them off. You can, use them as negotiating. And that's what we've seen. We've seen revenue come in. We haven't seen 4 months, not 2, Nick Timmeros, Wall Street Journal. 4 months of data and inflation, not much there. Let's go on to the rest of Powell's response.
The evidence seems to be mostly not paid only to a small extent through exporters lowering their price, and companies or retailers, sort of people who are upstream, institutions that are upstream from the consumer, are paying most of this for now. Consumers are starting to show up in consumer prices, as you know, in the June report. We expect to see more of that. And we know from surveys that companies feel that they have every intention of putting this through to the consumer, but the truth is they may not be able to in many cases. So I think we're just going to have to watch and learn empirically how much of this and over what period of time. I think we've learned that the process will probably be slower than expected at the beginning, but we never expected it to be fast.
Okay. Just like we expected inflation to be transitory. You got to watch with Powell's projections. You got to watch with a lot of these projections because a lot of the projections come up wrong. Inflation is transitory, dead wrong. Calling inflation transitory, convincing Congress to print $2.3 trillion is exactly why we have the inflation over a 3-year period that we've had. Got to be careful with the projections. We have surveys from company. Right now, the hard data, what actually matters, the hard data tells us that consumers are not paying for the tariffs. Institutions are. But our feelings and our projections are that that'll change. There's been surveys from company, but then he acknowledges on the flip of that they might not be able to. Okay, that maybe when these trade deals were made, somebody was playing chess, not checkers. Just maybe there's an acknowledgement there. We don't know in the end, obviously, how it's going to play out. What we know is that for 4 months straight, a lot of people, including the FOMC's projections on what tariffs were going to do, have come up wrong. Hasn't destroyed the economy. Has been a windfall for trade deals, has brought in revenue, June, first month of budget surplus. And so there's been a lot of people wrong. Nick Timmeros follows up, but he's talking about core goods inflation. We can skip on that. We'll go to this housing conversation here with Edward Lawrence of Fox Business. Let's go to that one at 2752 mark.
And just to follow, if I could, some additional tariffs have been in place since February, and things, really haven't broken yet with the economy. So how do you justify to somebody who's looking for a house, who's facing a 7% mortgage and maybe can't afford those rates? How do you justify that?
Justify it, Jerome.
Well, so the housing is a special case, right? We don't set mortgage rates at the Fed, right? We set an overnight rate. And
Correct.
the rates that go into mortgages are longer term rates, like treasury rates. It might be 30-year rates. It might be shorter than that, but it's not the overnight Fed's rate. It's not that we don't have any effect. We do have an effect, but we're not the main effect. There are other things going on in the housing sector. And one of those is just there's kind of a long-term housing shortage that we have. We haven't built enough housing. This is not something the Fed can help with, and that'll be the case even after things normalize. So I think the best thing that we can do for housing is to have 2% inflation and maximum employment.
Have it.
And that's what we can contribute to housing. There are lots of other jobs to do for the private sector and Congress, but that's what we're trying to get to. We've made a lot of progress toward that. We have a very good labor market right now. Inflation, we were very close to 2%. We're seeing some goods inflation move us away, but so far not very far away.
Okay. So listen, Fed cares not at all about the housing market. This is not something the Fed can help with. You heard that. He loves to talk about housing shortage. Fed can't do anything about it. Flips it back to Congress, and maybe that bipartisan bill from Elizabeth Warren, Tim Scott, 24-0 bipartisan, will have an impact. They're going to have. Talking about a long-term impact. Still doesn't impact rates. Jerome Powell, correct when he says we don't have the full impact on mortgages, but we have an effect. So every impact that we can get at this point to get mortgage rates into a reasonable number. I'm not looking for 3. I'm not looking for 3% mortgage rates. I thought that was kind of silly when we were at that level. And I think that'd be silly now for rates to get down there. But can we get a 5? Can we get 5 on it? Loonies. Ever heard of them, Haley? The Loonies. She has not heard of it. I'll play you the song after. Loonies. I got 5 on it. Can we get a 5 on it? Yeah, you have heard. Okay, there you go. She went to UConn. You should have heard that. The UConn Classic. All right, let's go to Jeff Cox, CNBC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking the question. Jeff Cox from CNBC.com. A metric that you like to cite a lot is the final sales to private domestic purchasers. That was down to a 1.2% gain in second quarter from 1.9% in Q1, suggesting that there's some softening in underlying demand. I just wondering if you look at that, you combine that with some of the housing numbers, the weakness that you acknowledged at the top of your remarks that the housing market is in fact weak, and the inflation numbers from GDP today came down to 2.1% for headline, 2.5% for core. I'm wondering how much more movement you would need to see from these data points before you would be comfortable with cutting in, say, September.
How much, Jerome?
It's going to be the total. Hard to answer that specifically. PDFP, I think, for the first half, private domestic final purchases or final sales, as people call it, was 1.6 on the first half. GDP, I believe, was 1.2%. That's the whole half. You mentioned the quarters. So those are slower, but GDP is bumpy quarter to quarter, half to half, and often gets revised, after the fact.
True.
The labor market data we still think is continue to think is the best data we have on the economy, and that shows a 4.1% unemployment rate. It shows wages, still at a healthy level, but moving ever closer to what we would regard as long-run sustainable, consistent with longer-run productivity and 2% inflation. So the labor market is actually still quite solid. Inflation is above target, even ignoring tariffs. It's a little bit above target, and tariffs.
2.1.
So we're watching all of that, and again, trying to do the right thing in what is a challenging situation, because you're being pulled in two directions, and you have to decide which of those it took to go in. And actually, at some point, if they're if they're sort of equally at risk, then you really want to be at a neutral policy stance, which we're not right now.
We'll let the follow up
So it'd be
run
safe
from
to
Jeff
say
Cox here. We'll let
That
the
if the
follow up
data
run
kind
here.
of stays in line with where it is right now, that you wouldn't be comfortable with cutting in September?
I'm not gonna say that. No,
This
I
is
just
what the
think
market's
we're going to need
said.
to see the data.
This is what the market's
and,
been like.
It
You
can go
drop
in many
off.
different.
We need to see data. They're going to get two inflation reports. So it's 45 days. Sometimes you get one report, depending on how the month falls. You can have three big, really, I guess, five big chunks of data or things to pay attention to as it relates to the Fed between now and that September meeting. Okay. You're going to have two major labor reports between now and 45 days from now in the next meeting. You're going to have two major inflation reports where sometimes you only get one depending on how the month falls. And the FOMC is taking their Jackson Hole symposium in August, where they go to Jackson Hole, drink fancy wine, and talk about, should we cut the rate or not? Should we acknowledge where inflation really is or not? Well, Polymarket, the degenerates gambling on this stuff, say 61% chance now in September, no chance of a cut, no change. 61% say no change. Only 37% say 25 basis points. This was like closer to 55, 60 before Jerome Powell did the presser yesterday. CME Group, it's their analysis, the CME Group, their opinion. If I refresh this one, doesn't look like it's giving it to me. Countdown hasn't updated. They're at 60% no change. Okay, so kind of in line with where the poly market is, only 40% chance of an ease in September. Again, like Jerome Powell said there's a lot of data to go over. Market was looking for a stronger signal that there might be a cut. Haven't seen that. Didn't get it yesterday. All right. Talking about inflation, we've got PCE data today. It's the Fed's favorite target. So this came out this morning. Personal income increased to 71.4 billion. That's a 0.3% up in June. This is U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. DPI, disposable personal income, less personal current taxes, increased 61 billion, 0.3%. Personal consumption expenditures, PCE, increased 69.9 billion. That was 0.3%. So PCE inflation moves up 0.3%. And from the preceding month, the PCE index for June increased 0.3%. Excluding food and energy, the price index also increased 0.3%. And from the same month 1 year ago, the PCE price index for June increased 2.6. So what does this mean? Where are we at on this particular inflation report? Inflation slightly above expectations. Personal income was at expectations, and PCE was below expectations. Okay, so a little bit of a wash here on this inflation report. This is real personal consumption expenditure, PCE, really flattening out. Talk about, hey, our job, one of our dual mandates is to stabilize price. And we've seen an abundance of data that that's kind of where we're at. What we were told in April by partisan analysts is that by this time, inflation was going to be rampant, so far out of control. Obviously, we're not seeing that. The market right now is not having any kind of reaction to the PCE. In fact, the stock market is reacting more to Meta and Microsoft than anything. The 10-year comes in today at 4.35, 4.368. If we look at the last 30 days, it's somewhere in the middle. We're on the lower end for the last 5 days. So kind of good news there on, less than 24 hours out of Jerome Powell and now PCE, some of these other things that are happening, where we sit. All right. NAR just released their pending home sale data for June. Of course, we saw existing home sales come in 2.7% less. month over month. We just saw that last week. This is continuing along a trend line of about 4 million existing home sales. So where are pendings coming in? What's the future sales look like? Well, June pending sales come in at a negative number as well, negative 0.8%. Month over month and year over year pending sales declined. Midwest, Southwest, and Northeast pending sales rose month over month, but remained in the Northeast. They rose month over month, but remained flat year over year. Chief economist Lawrence Yun says that the data shows a continuation of small declines in contract signings despite inventory in the market increasing. So, this is one of the things that I reference all the time when we hear everybody, including Jerome Powell yesterday, talk about it's an inventory process. It's a supply problem in the housing market. Is it? I mean, you've got supply increasing and you don't see sales increasing because it's not affordable. So the rate would have a much better impact on absorption than just kind of waiting for more and more supply to pile up on top of each other. Our index on pending home sales sits at a 72. An index above 100 coincides with a higher level of activity relative to 2001. We're well below 2001 activity levels. Pending sales in the Northeast edged up despite the region seeing the strongest home price growth in the country. Lowest inventory is the reason why for that. Northeast on the scale comes at a 64.7 relative to 100. So pretty pathetic in terms of relative to 2001. Month over month, though, 2.1% up. The West at a 54.3, month over month down 3.9% on pendings. Midwest comes in at a 73.1 on the scale, month over month 0.8% down. South, the strongest. The South, obviously, is an enormous region the way NAR does it. Includes both Texas and Florida. So you're talking about, this is a huge chunk of population here. South comes in at 86.1, month over month down negative 0.7% on pending home sales. So we're still seeing a very, as Powell put it, a very weak housing sector due to transaction reduction, which is due to the real estate recession spurred by what was originally transitory inflation, but higher rates kind of suffocating out would-be sellers and would-be buyers. We know from mortgage application data that the future certainly looks bright. We got to get there somehow on rates. Okay, 30-year fix yesterday on Jerome Powell Day came in at 6.75. So 6 3/4 is better than where we were a few weeks ago. We'll take it. Remember, the weeklies was coming in, just last week. The weekly on Mortgage Banker Association came in at 6.84. So 6 3/4 is good. Love to get 5 on it, like the Loonies said back in the day. All right, we've got a day coming up for you. It's September 24th. It's Scottsdale, Arizona. It's BAM Camp, bamcamp.live. I just got a text, Haley. VIP is sold out. Okay, so VIP is sold out. The main event and morning mastermind has what did Jill send? The main event mastermind has less than 10 tickets left. And then we got some of the main event tickets left. I don't know exactly how much, but this is going to be closing up soon here is essentially what's going to happen. Only in-person BAM event of the year. It's BAM Camp, September 24th, bamcamp.live. Go grab your ticket. If you're in driving distance to Scottsdale, it's a no-brainer. Love to see you there, September 24th in Scottsdale. And there you go. There's your Jerome Powell Day. All of the data that I went over here with you today and every day is going to be right inside of your hot sheet classroom. All the daily marketing data. We're about to add August here next week. Right inside of your hot sheet classroom. You can download it on the app or on desktop. One click of the button here to save it and send it in a text or email communication. Of course, packed into our classroom is more value and new value like the productivity playbook from Sharon Srivatsa. More coming from Sharon as he has joined BAM as our first and only, me, Eric, and now Sharon, BAM board members. Sharon believes in this community. You can read about it on nowbam.com, but he has now started the Sharon Srivatsa Knowledge Bank inside of BAMX on School every Friday. So just like last Friday and tomorrow, we drop hyper local, done for you content inside of the new this week classroom, continuing to add more and more value for our BAMX members. School.com/BAMX to join there. You can try it out for the next 7 days. All right. Here's your hot sheet. Haley. That's what we've got. We got walkthrough later today. We got a walkthrough, Haley says, here on the main channel. Now BAM on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. Appreciate all of you. I'll see you on Knowledge Brokers tomorrow. Until then, toodaloo.